Thank you so much, Carol. And we'll have a chance to have a discussion with other panelists and people from the participants from the audience in a couple of minutes. But right now, I want to introduce the next panelist. Unfortunately, Crystal Sanchez, who is the current Western Regional Director for the National Union of the Homeless and President of the Sacramento Homeless Union, was unable to join us today due to the threat of being evicted. And actually, we're going to post a GoFundMe link in the chat for people who may be able to assist Crystal. And actually, our next panelist is also in danger of being evicted. Just read a news report today that she received a 3-day notice. This is Martha Escudero. She's a housing activist who began occupying one of the 13 vacant Caltrans homes in El Sereno with her 2 daughters as part of the movement that seeks to address the inequities stacked against unhoused and housing insecure families during the pandemic. As a fellow reclaimer, Benito Flores said, quote, "Reclaiming a home is an act of civil disobedience. When there are many vacant homes, 3 vacant homes per unhoused person, it's a very clear injustice created by the government itself. So we act in civil disobedience, taking the vacant homes to make the problem public so that the whole world knows." And I'll just add one other fact which was brought to my attention, and that is that the reclaimers were very much inspired to take their action by the Mums for Housing, which Carol was involved in Oakland. So thank you, Martha.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm calling in from Ochunga, Place of the Roses, occupied Tongva land, now known as El Sereno, California. And yes, just as you stated, we did an illegal act by taking these homes that were abandoned, but in that logic, well, sometimes we do have to take direct action when the laws in place and the rules are unjust, immoral, inhumane. And so we have to take that step. And that's what we did. We did direct action. We were able to get a temporary housing agreement, but it was only 2 years and we're still in a housing crisis. And it was during the time of COVID. So they really expected us in this program of Los Angeles Housing Authority has, that we were going to get our life together and be productive members of capitalism and have affordable permanent housing elsewhere when that's not an option right now. And so they gave us a eviction notice and we're demanding that we transition in place because we are still in a housing crisis and there's still a lot of grief and chaos of the COVID pandemic going on. That, you know, people think we should go back to normal, whatever normal is, and that is really non-existent in a society that has the systems of oppression of heteropatriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy. So the system upholds this, and people that are not compliant and adapted to these oppressive systems then are criminalized and punished. And so we're telling them, this is our community, we don't want to be displaced. And just as they created a program to house us for 2 years in transitional housing, they can also create a program where we are able to transition in place. And our main demand is to transition in place with the El Sereno Community Land Trust, because that is the way we see viable way to have community control and prevent displacement. And this has to come from people that we have to like transform how we see housing. And as Carol said, when we see housing as a human right, then it really totally shifts on how then it doesn't become a commodity or for profit anymore, but it's a public good and a human right, and the fact that we are a part of nature. I feel like it's something that we've disconnected through relationship with nature and with ourselves, and we dehumanize each other. But when we realize that we are a part of nature, and that just as nature, we deserve a habitat that's safe and viable. And so this is what we're fighting for here in El Sereno and all over Los Angeles. And we're also utilizing electoral politics in this. I feel like we should use every tool possible in conjunction with direct action, because obviously sometimes, often more than anything, once you get in power, we don't hold these politicians accountable in any way, and we have to resort to direct action so they may hear us. Another thing that we're working on as collectively right now, in the district I'm in, it's the district that belongs to Kevin De Leon, which a lot of you have heard has been part of that scandal of gerrymandering in the districts, and that there's really racist and classist. And so before him, we had WeSAD, which was also stealing money from the district. And so we've continuously had politicians in this district that underuse, misuse the funds here. And so we are developing a people's assembly where it comes from the ground up, and we are able to choose our elected officials in some way, to also expand the elected officials to represent more of our communities, and really be led by the people that have lived experience and are from the ground up. And that's been going on right now, is just on that planning stages, and that we don't have to rely on a political system that's not working for us, and a political system that upholds the systems of oppression and gives power to corporations and big banks, and to themselves, to their own interests, instead of the interest of the people they're supposed to represent. So once we have more power and dialogue and relationship building, I feel like that's a perfect way to wean out of these systems of oppression. And this happens in other communities, especially indigenous communities, which I have learned from the Zapatista communities in Mexico and the Mapuche communities in Chile, Walmapu. And so they rely on people's assemblies and smaller groups that then rely, they also have elected officials in a lot of these communities in Zapatista and in Mapuche communities that act as the representatives of all these communities. So it's something that we can imagine and start building towards in order to have more self-sufficiency and autonomy outside the systems of oppression. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martha. And we'll be moving to questions and answers very shortly. First, we're going to have a musical break, and we'll be right back in about 3 or 4 minutes.
And though it's been too long and too many years have passed, may seem, we still live in the past. The essence of a black life, oh, trapped in the hourglass. And ever since we came to this land, the South has ruled the day. When we would stand as one and raise our voices and say, you know there will be no more lynching and no more talk of class. My sons and my daughters won't die in the hourglass. A toast to David Walker, a toast to Martin King, a toast to all the leaders who had a golden dream, a toast to all black fathers who lived their lives in faith, a toast to all black mothers who showed their life in faith, a toast to the people, yeah, a toast to the people, yeah, the beautiful people, yeah, the beautiful people, yeah, my beautiful black brothers, yeah, my beautiful black brothers, yeah, my beautiful black sisters, my beautiful black sisters, our sisters and our brothers, our sisters and our brothers, my sisters,
Thank you. Yeah, so now we'll go to questions and answers. And I have one question right here. Question for Martha. What is your opinion around the newly elected mayor, Karen Bass? And is she going to do anything to resolve the homeless issue in LA? That's a question from the chat. And also, I just thought I'd throw in, you've had a kind of a remarkable gain by progressive city council members on Los Angeles City Council. So what do you see as the impact of these changes?
I don't know how to feel about Karen Bass, to tell you the truth. I was for Gina Viola here in Los Angeles. I feel she needs to be stronger in advocating the dismantling of the police and really utilizing the resources we already have. And we have an abundance of vacant homes. We have an abundance of housing already and resources available here in Los Angeles. And I feel that building more housing is not necessary. Building more shelters is not necessary. What we need to do is have people with lived experiences really lead this movement and propose the programs and projects, and really take on these homes that are vacant and be utilized for public housing, for permanent affordable housing for everybody. And so I am hopeful that we could at least do a lot more pressure with Karen Bass and get her to do some of this, as opposed to Caruso. Caruso would have been really a nightmare. So although I'm not like too hopeful, I feel we can do, with the people power, we can pressure her.
Thank you, Martha. And apparently, it looks like Carol has had to step away, so we may not have Carol to answer more questions. But for Martha, luckily we have plenty of questions for Martha. We have another one here, which is how can people help fight this immediate problem of the eviction of the reclaimers?
For right now, we're demanding the people in power to help us transition in place, which they're throwing the ball around, so we don't really know who. There's HACLA, the Housing Authority, and Caltrans, and we finally, through direct action, was able to get a meeting with both of them, and that's what we're planning for next week. We would want supporters just to keep updated on our IG, reclaiming our homes, or any other updates we may have, we would post them there.
Is there going to be any kind of an action at the site of the homes? Is that planned in the immediate future?
As of right now, no. They are taking us into account as tenants, and they've given us a legal procedure, so we're gonna try to take it to court. But we would want supporters to just follow our page, because there might be more action coming up, and we really want to push HACLA and Caltrans and a lot of the entities, nonprofit entities here in Los Angeles. A lot of the CEOs are the Housing Authority CEO, Douglas Guthrie, is really out of touch with the community and is making almost $400,000 a year. And that's really a huge amount to be a poverty pimp and like make profit off of our poverty, because they have this revolving door of homelessness when we obviously have an abundance and surplus housing that they're just keeping for their own profit or just for power. And then we're really trying to push that these homes be utilized not only for the reclaimers, but for other people that are in need.
Thank you. What do the reclaimer see as the impact of LA County is apparently going to end their pandemic eviction moratorium on December 31st? Are you considering that?
Yeah, that's going to be death to a lot of people. We have seen actually homelessness rise during COVID, where we're supposed to be protecting people from getting sick, and this didn't happen. The Project Room Key was a disaster. The tiny homes, which are like tiny prison cells, was horrid, a nightmare for people. And so these options that they giving people are insufficient. Then they passed 4118 policy, which criminalizes unhoused just for resting on a public area. And so all these measures and these programs are just falling short in this housing crisis, because politicians are ignoring the vacant homes and not providing them for them, and instead are providing other insufficient programs. And if in these 2 years homelessness has increased, now with the eviction moratorium going on, there's going to be a lot more unhoused people on the streets, and I'm like fearing chaos. And that's what we're preparing right now to like counterattack that and really like keep each other safe by pushing as much as we can through any means necessary on these entities to provide safety for human beings. These are human beings. We're not disposable. And that's what we need to realize, that we're human beings. We're not disposable, and we should not be criminalized or punished just for being poor, especially because the ones that are the people we see on the streets are the most marginalized and vulnerable in society that we're supposed to be taking care of. A lot of people don't even see children there because they're taken from their families for being poor. But there's a lot of homeless children. There's a rising homeless population that are elderly, that we're supposed to take care of our elders, and instead we leave them out on the streets. They can't make it with their retirement check. it's just unaffordable. The rent here is unaffordable, that people with jobs and degrees can't afford rent here. So it's not that we're not working. It's not that that we're not producing, and we're actually like producers and creators and have jobs and degrees and education, and we still can't make rent. So this is a systemic and not an individual failure. This is a failure of the system. And so I urge people that if we see a system is not working for us and it's not sustainable for every living being, then we should not adapt to it and follow its rules. Then its rules are insufficient and we need to like abolish them. And so what we need to do is create a system that's actually sustainable for living beings. And we have choices, and we forget as human beings, we have choices. We do not have to adapt. We're not plants and animals that other animals that don't have a choice. We do have choices and can create something better.
And yeah, I know, as I think I mentioned earlier, I've been involved in establishing a community land trust in the San Jose area. And we're just starting, we're actually in the process of buying our first building right now. And one of the things which attracted me to the community land trust movement is this whole idea of decommodification of housing. That means treating housing as a human need and a human right, something that every person deserves and something that does not belong on a speculative market. So I guess some of my questions are, what do you see as some of the ultimate solutions to the housing crisis? And I know there's a lot of talk recently around the state anyway, and other places in the country around social housing, which is social housing is designed as basically decommodified, that it exists to meet people's needs rather than to like what you said, rather than to go along with the system and just try to fit into a system, a dehumanizing system. It's trying to set up a whole housing on a whole different basis.
Yes, definitely. It's that. It's totally transforming the way we see housing and seeing it as something we all need and deserve. That there's no human being that does not deserve this. There's no living being that doesn't deserve a safe habitat. And that's something that we need to acknowledge. And I feel land trust is a small step towards that. The land trust, and specifically the land trust, I'm on the board of El Sereno Community Land Trust because I feel it's also a step towards land back. We have board members that are on the Tongva Nation, the original caretakers of the land. So we take habitat and housing to encompass all living beings and not just humans. So we're also working in conjunction with other organizations such as Coyo Masawali that helps restore the land and the native species here in El Sereno, advocating for the black walnut so that a tree will not be taken away from its habitat. And so it's all these measures that we're taking to restore the land and go back to how we were like human beings again, like remembering that and upholding that we are part of nature, that we have to abide by nature. That's the law that we abide by. We don't abide by other laws. We abide by the law of nature, and nature tells us that we deserve housing, that we deserve safety, that we deserve beauty, that we deserve to rest in the winter and not work as much because everything in nature rests in winter time. Why are we so tired during this time is because of that, because we are part of nature. And once we recognize that and stand up for that, I feel like we could gain a lot more balance and restore even like climate change. I feel there's hope. It just has to come from us transforming our whole mentality and seeing that the system is not something we have to abide by, that there's other rules that other people follow in other nations that are way more sustainable, and learning from that and learning from nature itself. And so that's how it is, like fully transforming how we see ourselves, how we see housing, and that there's stepping stones towards those goals, that sometimes we can't gain anything at once, but there is small steps toward liberation and toward our rights.
Amen. Yeah, I remember a Native American elder once taught me, he said, the horses haven't forgotten how to be horses, and the deer haven't forgotten how to be deer, but we human beings have forgotten how to be human beings. And it's a very important concept. I think what we'll do now, I'm hoping you'll be able to stick around so that you can continue to answer questions after the other panelists speak. Is that possible, Martha? And then the three of you can address all the remaining questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, then, we're going to go to a couple of Oakland representatives, Ethel Long Scott and Dr. Kimberly King. They're co-chairs of the Laney College Poor People's Campaign in Oakland, California. And they're members of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America. And they're going to briefly discuss what revolution means to them and why we need organizations of revolutionaries.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for that great panel. Martha, I'm so glad to finally meet you in person and to really appreciate the work that you have, liberation work that you have done on behalf of all of us. Courageous, insightful, inspiring. So that's part of my wow. So much has happened in these midterms. Generation Z and women have showed up and showed out. Oakland has showed up and showed out, as well as Los Angeles. There is a new abolition class acting on its interests. We don't think about it that way, but this is really a big thing. The League has made some progress in its mission to assist the new class in its understanding of the power it has so that it can be a social force to secure political power. I'm wondering, Kimberly, we do a lot of political education here in Oakland, and I'm wondering if you might talk for a moment about the things we try to convey and encourage an understanding of the sort of the nature of the problem that both of our panelists have spoken to and that we try to teach about. Could you speak about that a bit?
Sure. Well, one of the things that, and it's really a pleasure working with you, Ethel, and with the other folks that we work with in Oakland, the students and the other community members. But one of the things that we've seen is that there's a new consciousness developing. There seems to be a new awareness, a stronger awareness that there's an actual system that we're up against. It's not just bad actors. We can see this consciousness reflected in the housing takeovers and the mass uprisings in response to police terror and systemic racism, in the demands for reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy, and in the defense of the water and the planet. And people are bringing all these issues into the ballot box too. And
so, I'm so sorry. I was
go.
hoping you'd talk a little bit more about this consciousness. What is this consciousness? Can talk to the audience about.
Yeah, Ethel. Well, we think it's a growing understanding that there's a capitalist system and that the capitalist system creates inequality. Most people are starting to realize that big real estate and other corporations, the patriarchy and the police, none of them work for us. Who do they work for? They work for a ruling class of wealthy corporate leaders and heirs. That class is protecting the white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist system from the rest of us. They're trying to keep us from the changes that we need. We're trying to create something new.
Wow, something new. That is a great kind of reminder that we're actually in a new economy that is driven by artificial intelligence, as opposed to the old economy of the rising industrial capitalism. And I probably don't have to tell many people in this audience, but AI is replacing jobs. Only our class can count on one another to keep us safe from late stage, end stage capitalism. When regular people come together to think and share and strategize a completely new future, an abolitionist future that includes reconstructing a new society And some change, we see that some change we need begins to happen, like families fighting for housing, youth fighting against criminalization, teachers fighting to keep schools open along with the young people, women and queer folk demanding bodily autonomy and reproductive justice, and migrants of all colors fleeing for their lives. We have common interests and we are all part of one class. So one of the things we need to do is reject this corporate lie of scarcity and build on the abundance made possible by AI. Robot production requires a new distribution method. I am so hoping and happy for when we can get that to be the popular discussion. To get there, we've got to come together to strategize the creation of a new cooperative society where all people have their needs met and have the opportunity to thrive and contribute to society. Somebody's mic is open. Try to remember to close it.
Yes, yes, Ethel. And so people are starting to be more aware of the system. But one of the things that's a little less commonly understood, I think, is that our class, all the people you described, we're stronger than many of us realize. Some people think, oh, there's nothing we can do against this system. But actually, if our class keeps growing in consciousness, it can bring about the changes that we need. The strength of this class is because of its role in the economy. It's a part of what's new and arising, and it is compelled to fight for a new world. More people are noticing the growth of, we've heard even the president talk about a new form of fascism developing here in the 21st century. But why? Why is fascism being imposed today? Fascism, which could be defined as the open terroristic dictatorship of corporate power and the destruction of electoral democracy, fascism is being imposed because we are fighting. It is an attack by the corporate rulers in response to the rising social movement. It is not because we are weak or because they are strong. It is because they know we are strong.
So this question about the people uniting around our needs and demanding a new society is the only thing that will be able to put the world right. This is one of the reasons that the League directs a lot of our energies to help equip the new class forces, leaders like Miss Carol Fife, who's now our councilwoman, and leaders like Miss Martha, who ought to be somebody's councilwoman down there in Los Angeles for their historic role. In these in these revolutionary times, we need organizations of revolutionaries to work together in unity to defeat fascism. The challenge of our class and the community is that we need political class power to secure our basic needs and to defend democracy and defend and extend democracy. In the League, we appreciate the power of heightened class consciousness to reconstruct society. That's the reason why, together with our marginalized new class folks, we teach as we fight. We spend time alerting the community about the war that is being made on our class, some of them already enumerated by our panelists. We ask questions like, what is the relationship between voting and direct action and practices by Moms for Housing and the reclaimers? We always work to tease out what are the two class sides. Our political education is aimed at equipping each and every one of our family members, friends, students, work colleagues to understand who and what we are up against so that we can play that powerful role as a social force.
That's right, Ethel. And to keep our movement on track to securing its demands, our class has to come together. That is our power, us coming together. We can unite around our common interests, around our common needs. We can persistently and strategically fight forward. So today, the League is seeking to work with you. The League is seeking to work with you and your organizations to secure your demands so that we can all work together to build long-term structural change.
So as we're closing, just think about this. The people are using the ballot, not just to secure elected positions, but they are using it as an organizing weapon. We need to seize the time We want to incorporate more new class abolition forces running on a basic needs platform. We are on the road together. We need to develop a class plan for 23 and 24 and to grow that is aimed at growing the class consciousness of our people. And that helps us to build unity and strength so that we move forward. And I'm going to borrow one from a tireless leader. So we go forward together and not one step back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ethel and Dr. King. At this point, we're going to move on to our second set of panelists. And I'd like to introduce now Melinda Levon.